I'm not a fan of microtransactions in video games, especially loot boxes. And right now there's been a level of anger that continues to build up with each new headline as different countries weigh in on the practice of microtransactions in video games. It's a complex issue that shaped gaming culture for the past decade, and it's one that we're losing. However, in this video I put my YouTube career on the line and I look at the current state of monetization in video games from every angle and discover why everyone is wrong about microtransactions. So, let's discuss. Do you remember a golden age of video games in a world before microtransactions were shoved down our throat?
Yeah, we're gonna kill you, maybe.
I remember when I was a kid, I'd play and beat a game and I wished that I could even make my own levels and more. Then I would wait. I'd wait all summer long or all year for another game to play and do it all over and over again. But that all changed one day, and it's the day that few will actually forget. It's the day we first learned of horse armor. First introduced in Elder Scrolls, this little add-on for the game would give your horse a temporary boost for just a few bucks. But it would last. Now those little things aren't really little anymore, and now the industry has shifted and evolved from trying to make good games that people want to buy to an industry that's on the hunt for whales so that they can live another day and develop another. Oh my gosh, I have to have this skin! Mom, where's the credit card? It's time that we talk about why everybody is wrong about microtransactions. And I mean everyone. We're going to look at why publishers are wrong, and why gamers are wrong, why I'm wrong. Okay, so let's have some fun. If you and you don't need to vote now, but let's say, you know what, you love video games, be sure to hit that like button. Otherwise, if you're a big fan of loot boxes or quote-unquote surprise mechanics, be sure to hit that dislike button so I can get a read on where everybody stands. You don't need to vote now. You can always vote at the end of this video. Okay, so let's start with the most polarizing statement. There is nothing wrong with microtransactions. Microtransactions, or MTX for short, is just a market response to a demand from players. While you might not specifically be saying that you want them, but gamers being estimated at over 2 billion gamers worldwide, and with new technology just on the horizon, that number is set to grow. This is a key factor here. Gaming and game investment blew up this last decade with big investments into China, and with India looking to come online more fully and faster than ever, game companies and publishers are itching to get a piece of that market. As a gamer who can remember the good old days, it feels like gaming has just been hijacked, and in ways that feeling is actually correct. What was once a niche hobby is now a global industry complete with professionals and an ever-changing and ever-shifting market. So first, I'm going to focus in on why publishers are wrong about microtransactions. I want to emphasize the importance of gaming and how it's only going to become more and more important in our lives. Back in the early 2000s, a gamer by the name of Wart Therapy lost his father when he was at the age of 6. 10 years later, they booted up his old dad's Xbox and found that he was able to challenge his father's best time in a racing game, Rally Sports Challenge. This is only going to get more and more prominent with the adaptation of AI and the cloud and more. I know people can race against me even when I'm not online in Forza and things like that. So just imagine it that when I'm long and gone from this world, that my kids can still have this experience of me in some way. It's not going to be the same, but it's better than the generation before. Video games mean things. They have an impact on our lives in profound ways. I still remember opening up Secret of Mana on Christmas, and for the first few months, I played nothing but that game with my little brother and our friends. As games have evolved, so have our ways to connect with other gamers and even the ghosts of our past. I tell you this story to first highlight how publishers are wrong when it comes to microtransactions. They're wrong when they overstep and try to take advantage of that special connection that we have to video games. Gamers are so passionate, some of the most caring people in the world, and it's with that passion that these publishers and marketers have leaned into and tried to press their advantage. With quotes from leaders within the game industry saying that a game doesn't need to be good, it just needs to make money, this ends up doing a lot of damage to those who these games mean something, a connection to our past, a road to our future. They aren't just a hobby, they are our social club, or our outlet, or a way for even the poorest of us to escape into a wonderful world just to have a bit of downtime. Listen, I'm not saying it's bad for a publisher to make money. We'll talk about more why gamers are wrong here when it comes to microtransactions in just a bit. But I am saying that the publishers are wrong when they try to exploit and manipulate those odds in their favor. We can clearly see this unfolding with over 2 billion gamers in the world, and the question is, who are these games for? This is where our first real difficulty comes in. When an M-rated game has microtransactions in it, I actually really don't have any issue. The game is built for an adult, and if an adult wants to go and spend his whole salary on the in-game items, that's really up to him. I see a lot of people get upset when a publisher would allow somebody to spend that much money, but they're just like any other store. You're an adult. There's got to be some level of personal responsibility. But then you have kids and vulnerable adults and those who aren't able to protect or defend themselves. Here's where it gets a little tricky. And honestly, it's where I find the most justifiable outrage. There is something to be said about parents who need to be in control and not hand their kids a credit card, and I 100% agree with that. This is one reason why we continue to make our parents' guides and series to better help educate parents on the tools they have at their fingertips. But back to the publishers. They're wrong when they make games that target kids and prey on their adolescence. Keep in mind, I said wrong, not illegal, and we're going to get into that later into this video. Think of it like a kid at a checkout at a register. When you're about to leave, obviously companies put candy there because they know you're more likely to have that impulse buy. It's not illegal, but a parent who stood there and had to continue to say no, I could tell you that I really welcome on more automation because it's a living nightmare. When you have to engage as a parent in that relationship with the kid and the microtransaction, perhaps there's a good life lesson here. But more often than not, parents end up using video games and YouTube and other things as a babysitter of sorts. And honestly, there is no way to fix that issue of making somebody care. Personally, I offer no judgments to parents out there. The world can be cold and unforgiving at times, and sometimes you're just trying to make it by. I get it. Life can suck some days, so I default back to education rather than judgment, and hopefully at the end of my YouTube career, the world will be better for it, but we'll just have to wait and see. So now let's talk about why gamers are wrong about microtransactions. Then we're going to jump into ways that we can hopefully help and better the odds, and obviously make a better and brighter future. Hopefully. Gamers are wrong about microtransactions because for the most part, they like to selectively look at history and remember the past as being the golden age for games. Often more than not, they're wrong when it comes to picking and choosing who can and can't charge money for in-game items. Collectively, gamers feel like microtransactions are fine as long as they don't impact progress. But then there are even those who feel like it just incentivizes companies to focus in on non-gameplay elements and thus we get less game for our money. Gamers are also wrong when you just look at the numbers. Fortnite is set to bring in $2 billion a year, and other games can do great too, even with different in-game economies. But it's clear to see that the idea that microtransactions should not be included in games isn't going to happen anytime soon, and with more and more subscription game services on the horizon, we're only going to see games set up to monetize themselves in more and varied ways. Why gamers are wrong here is at the core that there's actually nothing wrong with a microtransaction, other than perhaps its name. A microtransaction is just a transaction with the game, be it if you buy the game outright or pay for some kind of in-game currency, etc., etc., etc. Like I said at the top of this video, I'm actually not a fan of these systems, but unfortunately they're here to stay, but maybe just for now. Ultimately, these transactions, these publishers, these gamers, they're actually dictated by the rules of economics. It's just like any other system or business out there, supply and demand. Sure, the outrage makes for great headlines, but venting your frustration in a comment on a YouTube video does little to nothing to move the industry forward. And it's actually in that chaos that these publishers thrive, that the system that feels so greedy thrives. This all goes back to gamers being some of the most passionate people on the planet. They care deeply about their games and the industry, and it's that which has been hijacked by these companies and put gamer against gamer, bringing in discord rather than unity. And I'll illustrate it with this example. For all the gamers who've told me that EA sucks and they hate microtransactions, IFA and FIFA alone continue to bring in and report millions of dollars a year just on the backs of these transactions in one specific game. 800 million is a massive hurdle because people are spending that kind of money on the game, and games like Fortnite obviously exist and they're making plenty of money. These gamers are sending a clear message. From here, what we see is rather than inviting these gamers and educating those gamers on perhaps maybe a better way, I see gamers attacking them, which only cuts them off from us even more. Furthermore, and this is actually a big one, with all the money that's being made, this attracts new investment and even more money to make those kind of games in the first place. You might not see this directly, but I can remember there being months where there weren't any games out, to months where there are just too many games to play now. All great games, all worthy of my time and attention. This too also means that there are a lot of crap games out there as well, but it's a two-way street. More money, more interest, more investment. And that goes away if microtransactions go away. Essentially, in the end, the market will decide, and if you have any hope of changing the system, you have a few options at your fingertips. First, educate and invite gamers into a better way and support the games that they love, and with systems where both gamer and publisher can win. What this means is that you engage in these systems that you like and you vote with your wallet. If systems are better and they make more money, you can bet publishers will see this and respond to the markets, and they will evolve as well. The other option is you got to get involved with the government and contact your representatives to help remind them of bad practices within the industry. Remember, the ESRB and the ESA do not represent gamers. They represent these publishers. So don't expect them to stand up to the things that you believe in. If you want to know how to get involved, just Google your representatives and be sure to write, call, or schedule a meeting and try to meet them in person. Personally, I don't feel like waiting for the government to do anything, let alone hope the system that replaces the current one is any better off after all. That's why I'm going to continue my work on educating and inviting gamers to experience the job of gaming without fear of getting addicted to some stupid gimmick that I'm sure doesn't make the person feel any better about playing the game in the first place. It's a complex issue for sure, I give you that. There's a lot of moving pieces here. There are a lot of players involved, and there's a lot of money on the table. I'm sure I'm not making any friends with these kind of statements. Again, I don't fault any company for wanting to make money. They have things they have to ensure. They have to protect themselves. And that's where greed becomes this weird thing within just the nature of itself, because it can disguise itself as a virtue. It can disguise itself as being prepared, but it's essentially where you start to basically try to just get everything from somebody else, never give anything back, and protect yourself. But then at the same time, you're like, well, we got to pay HR, we got to pay legal, we got to pay all these people. Like, they've got to run a business, and these ships are huge, and a loss, you got to like insulate yourself from just one specific loss. And that's kind of where a lot of the conversation breaks down. A lot of the conversation between the developer and the gamer breaks down, because essentially we just easily want to slap some kind of label of greed on them. Yeah, perhaps for some of them it clearly makes sense, but for others it doesn't necessarily make sense. And when we diminish that just because we might not like that game or that franchise or the people who play it or enjoy it, we're not doing ourselves any favor. Anyway, this is again hopeful and educational, at least as to my insight about the game and the industry. Obviously, this is my opinion, and it easily could be wrong. Opinions are just that very thing. But with all that being said, I want to know your opinion about all this, and hopefully you've gotten something real positive out of this. Hopefully you've enjoyed this video. Again, if you have, be sure to hit that like button, share it out, and get more people involved in the conversation, because essentially what I'm ultimately calling for, and it's going to be a slow process. These things are going to take time, because clearly when you're talking about $2 billion just for one game alone, they don't care. Like, what's one YouTuber going to do? Nothing. But if we can keep educating ourselves, if we can invite people into a way of saying, like, listen, here's how we want to do it. This is how I'm going to handle it. I'm going to try to educate parents, because I see a lot of money going out the door from parents who just aren't aware, and I can't even imagine the stress that's going to put on them for just some in-game currency. But we have to be engaged in these systems to reward and to respond to those that are doing well, because that's going to help them make money, and that's going to help educate and shape the market. If we're just not engaged at all in the market, what incentive do they have to listen to us in the first place? If I'm going to sit here and say, yeah, EA sucks, you can scream that to the top of your lungs, but if you don't ever buy EA games, if you don't ever communicate to EA and let them know, like, hey, if you fix the crap that you're working on, I'll come back, you know, what incentive do they have to change? Anyway, like I said, it's complex, and hopefully this has been a good video and a good conversation, and ultimately leading to something deeper and more involved and a way forward. But like I said, these are just my thoughts. I'd love to know yours. Sound off in the comments below. Let's have that conversation. For Work to Game, my name's Brian. Thanks so much for watching this video. Hope to see you in my next, and this is a part of a series, so be sure to keep an eye out on future videos that are all connected to one theme altogether. Anyway, like I said, thanks for watching. Take care.